Good evening, everybody. As was mentioned, my name is Michael John O'Mahony. And I'm absolutely delighted to be here this evening. I brought my oversized clipboard because it makes my small hands look even more tiny. So we see where this is going very early doors. I suppose I'm absolutely delighted to be here this evening. One of the things that about this is the first time I've ever done anything like this. And thankfully, the people at the Bright Club are very good, and they gave a lot of us first-timers, I suppose, some advice, some tips, and some cheat sheets. And I want to read you some of the insights they gave us, and I want you to keep them in mind throughout our performance this afternoon, or this evening. This afternoon, apologies. So they say that these events are always really fun, and the audiences are extremely friendly. Nice. Remember that. They also say that I have to try and get a laugh or a shout from the audience very quickly, and that's underlined, to help them be engaged and comfortable with you as a performer. So how about we get the shout out of the way early so we can get on with this? Lovely. So you may kind of notice from my accent that I am actually from the south. I'm a southerner. I'm actually from Cork. Anyone from Cork here? Right, we've all left, obviously. And I suppose one of the things about when we're dealing with climate change is that a lot of it is actually quite counterintuitive and it's quite ironic. And we all know in Cork that we're going to be badly impacted by climate change when it comes to coastal flooding and sea level rise. And I say this to my international colleagues, and they say to me, "Oh, you're from Cork and you're going to be affected by sea level rise. But sure, doesn't Cork float?" Anywho, I'm also incredibly impressed with the work that's going on in the agri-tech industry. We've heard this evening how cattle and cows are very much, they're kind of the villain in all of this with their belching and all that stuff and all the methane and all the land use stuff. And I'm quite amazed at the amount of work that's going on in the agri-tech sector. Now, the agri-tech people and the agri-scientists, what they're doing is they're actually putting motion detectors and GPSs and all the sort of this very fancy technology on cattle. And this technology will help us to work out what the cattle are doing. So it'll work out when the cattle are moving. It'll also work out when they're eating. It'll also work out very important things like when a heifer is in heat, when the heifer has been mounted by a bull, and when the heifer is going to calf. Okay. And they're going to put these little chips and they're going to glue them to the tails of the cattle. And they've come up with a name for them, but I have a better name for them. I think we should call them shit bits. One more. I come from a long line of beekeepers. My father was a beekeeper, my grandfather was a beekeeper, and I had a really wonderful childhood. There was a great buzz around the house. Finally, I suppose we're talking here about climate change, and what often is used in that word as well is denial. And we've seen a lot of stuff going on in the last couple of months, particularly with the school strikes and Fridays for Future and all that stuff. And that's all great. But I think the real indicator that things are changing is if any of you notice, this is true. Everything I'm saying here this evening is true. There's no lies. My father was a beekeeper. Okay? Is that when you now look at the Ryanair ads, Ryanair are branding themselves as the lowest emissions airline. Now, if they get it, we really are on the first stage. They've gone past the denial stage. And one of the things we see in climate, not to bring everybody down, is that the way we deal with climate is very much like the same way we deal with grief. Do you ever hear the 5 stages of grief? Apologies to the international audience. Respect. And it goes through denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and then onto resolution, solution. And one of the things we're particularly interested in is moving away from just that cycle that happens at the start, and that we don't move onto the solution. Now, I suppose the other thing is I'm not a technical expert in the area of climate solutions. I work in the area of environmental education. I'm also actually Gary's agent, stroke pimp. After the nights, I actually work with Gary, or Gary works with me, or I don't know what's going to happen after tonight. But if you want to look at technical stuff, and this is a really good thing to have a look at, is maybe have a look at something like Project Drawdown. There's a load of really very gifted people and very good technical people out there who have come up with all sorts of solutions as to how to look at this. In the drawdown scenario, they've looked at the top 100. And as I said, climate is often ironic. The top thing that we can do as regards removing the large amounts of CO2 and greenhouse gases is to actually look at our refrigeration. The irony in a warming planet looking at refrigeration. Also, you'll see within that there's not just technical solutions, there's also things like cultural solution. And that's the insight I want to bring to you kind of this evening. We work on programs that you may be familiar with, things like green schools, green flags flying in schools, yes? Green campus, I heard NUIG are in here tonight somewhere. Oh God, not many of them. But we're very involved in that area, and our insight is about the importance of culture. And the starting point with that is, it kind of was mentioned in roundabout ways earlier, is that everybody says the first excuse in an Irish context is, there's only 4 million of us, should we make no difference in a world of whatever 8 or 9 billion of us that are out there? But in many ways, we punch above our weight. We punch above our weight in a bad way and in a good way. In the bad way, we're very high on the per capita CHG, greenhouse gases scenario. And the 4 million of us produce the same amount of greenhouse gases as the 400 million poorest people on the planet. And that it was mentioned earlier about the famine and stuff like that. We have a long cultural kind of history and resonance with that type of thing. And I think that's a very important thing that we kind of take cognizance of as well. On the plus side, we punch way above our weight in situations like this, as communicators, as storytellers, as musicians, as writers, as all these things. And I think we really need to emphasize that. I can't emphasize how important storytelling is to a climate solution. God, we're all got very serious all of a sudden. You okay? I'm feeling the heat. But there is a wrinkle, there is a rub in all this. And we have quite an international audience here this evening. I heard we have people from Italy, we have people from Spain, we have people from all over the world. And one of the things we have is a lot of people come to Ireland to sample or to experience the culture. Fantastic. Galway couldn't do better. I think it's actually the city capital of culture. Or should I mention it? Is that a kind of a bad topic to mention in Galway? I'm very naive. We had it in Cork and we did a great job. There you go. We'd Sean Og beating a slitter that was on fire into the River Lee. There you go. Good times. So one of the things I'd be particularly interested that we work on is what I call the price of crack. And and not in the legalised narcotic scenario. We could legalise certain things. I don't think legalising crack would be a particularly good idea. And I would use the expression, we've all heard the unfortunate derogatory term, a crack whore. We kind of operate as more like crack whores. In the sense that what we do is, there's a price to the crack, and that is that we have a very bad say-do dichotomy. We say one thing, do the other. It was mentioned by some of the other previous speakers. We can manage to keep a dozen different ideas in our head at any given time. Many of them are contrarian with each other, and we can function normally. And a lot of my international colleagues are absolutely fascinated by this. And I try to explain how things work in Ireland, very much again through this grief curve, what's called the Kubler-Ross curve. And back in the 90s, there was a big vogue for radio prank shows. Yes? You all remember them? Now, I recommend you go on YouTube and you have a look for one from 96 FM called Dogs. D-A-W-G-S. Dogs. And it's a prank whereby a person who owns a large number of unlicensed dogs is pranked by his own wife, who gets a radio station to ring him and ask him about the dog licenses. So the conversation goes through the perfect curve: denial, depression, da-da-da-da. Please listen to it. I'm telling the truth. So it starts out with, "Hi, my name is Rishtard Kyown. I'm ringing from..." How many Gael Geors here? There's no Gael Geor here. Rishtard Kyown. Jesus. "My name is Rishtard Kyown. I'm ringing from the dog licensing office in Dublin Castle." Now, if you've a kind of an inkling of Irish history as well, Dublin Castle has a certain resonance for people in West Cork. It has a very, very strong resonance. And he says, "I'm ringing about a matter that you may have a number of dogs that are unlicensed." The response is, "Dogs? I've no dogs." In the background, you can hear, "Roo." And Rishtard says, sorry, I can clearly hear a dog in the background. And he goes, Christ, that's only unlucky. Here he's half dead. He's one eye and three legs. And better get a license. I thought he'd be dead. Right, you still have to get a license. Sure, I can't get a license. So we go through the bail bucked. We're very good on the bail bucked. You don't get the bail bucked in other countries, I think. The bail bucked is the poor mouth. And then we move on to things getting a little bit more frisky, whereby obviously the wife is out in the yard riling up 28 dogs. And all you can hear is, Christ, Hannah, would you shut those whores up? So we're now moving down through the curve. It then gets quite nasty and it kind of, who are you to tell me? And the usual type of it. But what is interesting is it does resolve at the end. And it resolves at the end through the fact that Rishtard is obviously very skilled at his job and kind of negotiating these scenarios. And I think that's a very big part of the storytelling as well, as that it allows us to negotiate. And that's a hugely important part of what we need to do. But it ends up in the end where he kind of, the resolution is that, shall I give you a ring? What's your number? 021. 021? Sure, that's a Cork number. So he was glick enough for that. So I suppose if you take anything from this evening, we have a fantastic opportunity. It's pretty grim stuff. As several of the people said, trying to be funny about debt, carbon taxes, and the end of the world. Not exactly the easiest of gigs. But we do need to have hope. I think if we don't have hope, doing all this stuff is, it's nihilistic. There's no point. We have to actually make that happen. So I think taking away from tonight as regards a culture, as regards a solution, culture, understanding it, and kind of fast tracking our way through that grief curve, because we don't have the time. We don't have the time to be messing around. So I'll leave you on this very interesting nugget or thought. Sometimes unicorns are donkeys with party hats. Thank you.